Attention, you're listening to The Todd Huff Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk and education. Be advised, the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. And now, coming to you from the Full Suite Wealth Studios, here's your conservative but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
All right, my friends, I want to talk about the Iran deal today a little bit. There's a lot of things I want to get to. Playing a little bit of, catch up on some of the things that we were not able to get to earlier this week. I want to talk about polling regarding the Iran deal. I want to talk about something that JD Vance said about the Iran deal that I think was quite well said. I also want to talk, what else do I have here? I have several things I want to get to today, my friends, and we'll get there in due course. The other thing, this is something else that's important to me. There's FBI agents that are, as the New York Post here says, descending on Skid Row in Los Angeles in a massive voter fraud probe after stunning claims of election bribery. I want to talk about that. Other things in the news as well, including a minor league baseball team that had a problem with the jerseys. They had Pride Night. They had jerseys that had rainbows on the sleeves. Several of the players refused to wear them. And so the team, you won't believe what the team did. I'll get to that probably in the final segment of the program today, my friends. It's good to be here. Thank you for joining us. If you want to share your thoughts and questions, you can always text 317-785-1030. You can email Todd at toddhuffshow.com. If you're on social media, Facebook, Instagram in particular, YouTube as well, you can share your opinions in the comments below. Help us if you're on social media. Help us, if you will, reach more people. We've gotten recently a lot of traction. In fact, we had what I would consider our first viral video of sorts, getting over a reach of 1 million. So thank you for helping us with that as well. But this is, it would help us get the message, the conservative, not bitter message out. Again, our mission here is to help people hear and receive truth. And I appreciate you joining us here today. However you do that and listen to this program, my friends. There's a lot of confusion out there about Kratom. You've probably heard the headlines, and most of those are based on synthetic junk that isn't real Kratom at all. Real Kratom is safe when it's, tested, when it's natural, when it's not a synthetic, when it's handled with care. And that's exactly what you get from Christopher's Organic Botanicals. They are a family-run company that partners directly with farmers in Indonesia. Every batch is lab tested for purity. There are no chemicals. There are no fillers. There are no shortcuts. This is a trusted herbal option. This is important. That's been used for generations, and it is a real alternative for people looking for something that doesn't come with a warning label that is as long as a CVS receipt. So, if you think this is something that makes sense for you, then start with the Kratom Starter Pack. Use coupon code ToddHuff, and you will save 10% on your first order. You do this by visiting Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. That's Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. Truth, tradition, transparency, my friends. All right, let's begin here. I want to start with the Iran deal. I want to talk about this a little bit. Two things I want to get to. First, let me give you the polling. This is at Breitbart.com. If this tab will load here on the old trusty MacBook Pro here. Here we go. Breitbart headline here. Poll: strong majority of U.S. voters approve of Trump's Iran deal. Now, listen, I know that there's those of you in this audience who do not approve of this deal. I would venture to say that most people are happy that we've at least got a roadmap, potentially. Again, we have to consume this information with some, I don't want to say hesitancy, but we have to have both feet planted firmly in reality. We have to understand that the Iranian government has, and we should expect continue, they have in the past and will continue. It's logical to suggest or believe that they will continue to play games in the future. They really want to have a nuclear weapon. They also really want to not all be taken out by U.S. and Israeli airstrikes and so forth. They've seen what has happened over there, and they are trying to figure out the best balance here. So, again, they want a nuclear weapon at all costs. They think that they're justified in having it, of course, but also they believe, maybe more so than any other country in the world, they would have a justification for using it quicker and, just without justification, but yet they believe they have it. Again, what's at the core of the Iranian government is a belief that they have a country, they have a type of government, a theocracy, an Islamic theocracy that says, we have done this the way that Allah wants to do it, and if you oppose this, then we are justified in killing you. This is their interpretation. We have to come to grips with this. This is not something I'm making up. This is not something that has no basis in reality. This is how the people governing the Islamic Republic of Iran function. This is how they think. And so we've gone through this. I don't want to rehash all of that, but that's what this is ultimately all about. In fact, there's a lot of, I've even seen the Babylon Bee jump on. I saw a post from the Babylon Bee that said, I'm going to paraphrase this. I may not get it exactly right, but it says, man imitates Trump while negotiating with his wife, gives her everything she wants. Basically saying that Trump had given Iran everything that it wants. And listen, I chuckle at it. I love the Babylon Bee, by the way. I don't see it this way. In fact, I want to read a clip, a short clip from what JD Vance has said, how he's framed this particular situation, and I think it's right. But I wanted to start here by telling you the numbers here. The signed preliminary agreement between the United States and Iran, this is from Breitbart.com, has a strong majority approval rating amongst American voters. A national survey from Quantus, Quantus, if you want to look it up yourself, found. So we know that Trump signed the MOU yesterday, the Memorandum of Understanding, that ended the hostilities with Iran following the G7 summit on Wednesday at the Palace of Versailles with Iranian president, don't even ask me to pretend to pronounce that, but he signed his copy remotely. So let's look at the numbers here. The numbers show that over 60% of Americans are in favor of this deal. Going here for the, let me refresh this because I had a screenshot. It must have deleted the image. That happens from time to time here. There was a very small minority. It was like 15, under 20%, we'll say that did not. Where are the numbers here, Breitbart? I just saw this when I was getting ready for the show. Let's see here. I do see here it said they polled, there we go. They polled 1,000 likely voters on June 16th and 17th, with 40% saying they strongly approve. That doesn't even include the approved. I don't know why they haven't put that in here. But it was over, I believe the total was over 60%. I promise you, I just saw this on here, and now it is the image. Maybe that's the image that's not supposed to. Let me click this link. Bear with me. Gotta love live technical problems here on the show. Anyway, a lot of people, the majority of people are in favor. Now, that doesn't mean that it's right. That doesn't mean that it's correct. That doesn't mean that you can't have a different opinion. In fact, I think we should all come to this conclusion, our own conclusions with our own way of thinking. I understand that there's listen, we're dealing with a maniacal regime. We're dealing with people who want, there it is. There it is. Don't know why they couldn't have put this in the article. Approval of preliminary U.S.-Iran agreement. 56% approve. I said it was over 60. It's 56%. I'm correcting myself here. And only 13% disagree. So that's 69% of the people who have voiced an opinion. The others, I guess, either don't know or don't have an opinion at this particular point in time. So that's important to understand here, where we are, at least in the minds of the public. Now, you may have seen a lot of senators, a lot of folks in Congress are coming out against this. Some of them improperly framing what has happened here. For example, part of the deal allows up to a $300 billion, I believe, investment in Iran, rebuilding infrastructure. But the United States, a lot of people are saying, including Ted Cruz, I don't know if he's corrected himself, but saying that the United States is going to foot that bill. That's not the case. The United States is allowing for foreign investments up to, I think it was 300. It was a lot of money. So this, of course, leads people to say, hey, you've given them everything you wanted. Yeah, you blew their country up, so to speak, hitting these primary military targets and these targets where they have enriched uranium, we believed, or the capabilities of enriching uranium or using nuclear technologies and storing weapons and that sort of stuff. And now we're just going to give them the money to rebuild. As I said, I think it's critically important here. You come to whatever conclusion you want to come to on this particular issue. But you must understand the single, I guess you could say there were two purposes of what Trump set out to do in this war with Iran. Number one was to walk away with them having no capability of having a nuclear weapon. This is unacceptable. This is not something that we are going to go along with. That's number one. Absolutely, draw the line in the sand, a red line, whatever you want to say. Iran should not acquire nuclear weapons. Full stop, period. Couple of exclamation points. End of story. Should not happen. That is paramount. That is the number one objective. Number 1B is that Iran stops participating in proxy wars and supporting terror activities, terror organizations in the region. That, of course, is awful as well. So that's what we went in there with. And so JD Vance summarizes this quite well. This is an article at newsmax.com. I'm just going to read for you what he says. I'm not going to play a soundbite. Vance, this is the headline, Trump-Iran deal differs from Obama's 2015 pact. I think that this is very well said, by the way. Vice President JD Vance on Thursday pushed back against Republican criticism of President Donald Trump's Iran agreement, arguing it's, quote, fundamentally different from former President Barack Obama's 2015 nuclear deal because it prohibits uranium enrichment and comes after Iran's nuclear program was destroyed. So this is an important difference. Some people are drawing the conclusion, you know what? We went to war. We went to war with Iran, airstrikes and, causing economic tensions here in our country, putting burdens on families with the high price of oil and all these things. And we walked away, some critics say, with basically the same thing that Obama negotiated with Iran, the JCPOA back in 2015, the Iran nuke deal. But here's what JD Vance says, and I think this is definitely worth taking time to consider and think about. You have to remember, he said, in 2015, Iran had built a sophisticated nuclear weapons program with a nuclear weapon stockpile. So the perspective that we came at as the United States was, you already have a really nice nuclear program. We're going to bribe you with American money in order to stop it. So that's his summary. That's how he summarizes the Obama nuclear deal back in 2000. What was that? 2000. When was that? 2000. Yeah, 2015. Sorry about that. So he goes to compare and contrast here. They have nuclear program. We basically said, please don't use it. We're not going to stop you from, we're not going to take away what you already have. We're just going to say, please don't. Here's some money on top of that. And this is an important distinction. And he says this, he continues, our perspective, talking about the Trump administration, and where we're coming at it, is we already destroyed your nuclear program. And so if you promise and show verifiable pathways to not rebuild it, then we are willing to give you some sanctions relief and things like that. So that's how he summarizes the difference. And I think that there is a core truth here in this, in what he's saying. It is fundamentally different than what was negotiated, if you will, back in 2015. It was a pinky promise. It was, please don't use what you have. It also was from a position of weakness. I mean, that's important too. Listen, again, I don't want to go to war, but if you are not prepared to enforce the terms of an agreement, the agreement is not worth the paper that it is written on. And so what we have now, we have an aggressive campaign that was thoroughly targeting Iran's nuclear sites, military capabilities, and so forth. We made a major impact. Trump's even said we've destroyed their Air Force and Navy, but we made a major dent in their military and in their nuclear program. Decimating it, some would say. Listen, I think that there's getting the intelligence on this can be a little tricky. Some of these things don't require, a lot of space to be able. They could have enriched uranium that potentially we don't know about. I think that we're comfortable enough saying that we have gotten enough of this. We've hit enough of this to say that we've dismantled or maybe even annihilated their nuclear program. So now we're going to say, look, now we're going to negotiate here. We're going to give you some sanctions relief. We're going to let other countries work with you in rebuilding. And again, you got to think about this from the perspective of the people of Iran. That's always been part of this equation too. Our problem was with the Iranian regime. We want the people of Iran to be freed from from the heavy hand of tyranny that they are under in Iran. They're not dealing with a good bunch of folks, my friends. And so we're working with them to say, look, as long as you continue to abide by the basic two premises here, we don't want you building nuclear weapons, and we don't want you engaging in terror activities, supporting terrorist organizations and so forth, we're going to be good. Of course, the biggie is the nuclear weapon, because that's a game changer. That changes everything in the blink of an eye, and that is unacceptable. That's, as I've said, that's the primary. That is what we wanted. That is what Trump wanted. He decided that if they had a nuclear weapon, they would likely use the nuclear weapon. They would at least use it as a very strong negotiating and bargaining chip, and it is quite possible, with their level of hatred and the level of justification they have in their own minds, to take out those who do not share their religious beliefs and live under their theocratic rule and so forth. They believe that they have the right given to them by Allah to take these folks out. And so Trump decided, and I agree, that this would change the landscape in the blink of an eye. If Iran gets a nuclear weapon, it would change everything immediately, and that is unacceptable. So that's what this was all about. That's what this was all about at its core. The American people seem to be in agreement here, at least right now. We'll see if if public opinion changes. But, from the American people's perspective, a lot of people, they simply don't know what we're talking about here. A lot of people just wanted an end to this war. And I understand that. A lot of people say, look, this is putting financial stress upon my family. By the way, a couple of other things that have come in the wake of this deal being signed. This is at theepictimes.com. Headline, crude hits new 3-month low as Trump and the Iranian president sign a deal lifting Iran oil sanctions. That's out there in the news. Also, where this impacts most Americans the most is at the gas pump. Headline at Breitbart here says gasoline drops below $4 a gallon, which is still high. I'm not here to defend that, but now we are on the downward the downward trickle of gas prices, of oil prices, and it will continue to do this again, notwithstanding something else happening in the region. Hostilities flaring up. We've already seen Israel and Lebanon have some further skirmishes. That this is, this is a very, it's a developing story. But if this continues, if this moves us towards long-term peace, if they agree to this, if we have a plan in place that makes sure that we do not allow them to have a nuclear weapon, if it gives us the ability to really inspect what's going on, if it gives us the ability to have enforcement measures, if this final deal that's hammered out is actually something that we will enforce. And that's the thing, we will enforce it during Trump's term. Make no mistake about it. The Iranian government knows this. What happens after that depends largely upon who's in the White House. So that's where we are with that. That's we'll stop there. We'll stop there because I have to take a break, my friends, here in just a moment. So, are you tired? Are you tired as an American consumer as we approach America's 250th birthday here in just a couple of weeks now? Are you tired of spending your hard-earned money at businesses that turn around and support leftist, or dare I say, anti-American causes? This is something that we should all pay attention to. This is something a lot of people don't talk about. You go to a business, you buy something from them, get a service. They turn around, they provide that service, that product, but then these large corporations who are supporting these radical causes, these radical organizations, they take the profits from the money you gave them, and then they give it to these causes. Give that money to causes that you do not agree with. And not just have some level of disagreement with. This fundamentally, these things go against what you believe, and these are antithetical to your beliefs. So that's why we created Freedom Marketplace. It's a free searchable directory of businesses that share your conservative values, businesses that have vowed not to support leftist candidates or leftist causes. You don't have to log in. You certainly can create an account, but you do not have to log in. There's no strings attached. There's just good, patriotic businesses that are pushing in the same direction you are pushing. Check it out today at freedommarketplace.net. That's freedommarketplace.net. Liberty and business for all. Quick time out, my friends. Back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Getting here to the end of this busy week. It's hard to believe it's Friday. It's hard to believe we're halfway through the month of June. It is hard to believe that we're halfway through this program here as we move ahead with what we have here left to discuss this week. So, get to that, my friends, in just a minute. But let's be honest, when your financial world starts getting a little bit more complicated, you need more than one-size-fits-all advice. That's where Full Suite Wealth shines the brightest. Their team specializes in working with families and individuals at your level, offering personalized guidance that goes far, far beyond the basics. From private equity and private credit to options, strategies, and coordinated legal planning, Full Suite Wealth helps you see the big picture and make confident decisions about your legacy. It's all about having a dedicated team to guide you each and every step of the way so you can focus on what matters most. Things like your family, your goals, and your future. If you want real confidence in your financial life, visit fullsuitewealth.com. That's fullsuitewealth.com. Build your legacy, secure your future. Okay, headline here. I told you I want to shift gears. There's three things I want to get to today. This is the second one. We'll move past the discussion on the Iran deal. We're moving into this one now. This is another big story that I'm curious to see where this thing ends up. Headline here at the New York Post.com. FBI agents descend on Skid Row in massive voter fraud probe after stunning claims of election bribery. So we had an election in Los Angeles. For all I know, they're still counting the votes. I've seen the Babylon Bee say that now, according to the tallies, Spencer Pratt has negative 1 billion votes in the count of the 2026 mayoral race in the city of Los Angeles in the People's Republic of California. And so you remember we went to bed a couple of weeks ago on election night thinking Karen Bass had won, thinking Spencer Pratt had finished second, and that Rahman had finished third. Well, that's where we were that night. Spencer Pratt had, I believe, a 4-point lead on Rahman. But in the days to come, it was interesting because when they started counting these mail-in ballots that they allow their system, it's just a side note here. The amount of people who I've encountered who say, well, they're following their system, Todd. And I say, fine, that their system is idiotic. This entire thing, the way that it's set up, we're counting ballots for days and weeks. The way that everybody gets a mail-in ballot mailed to them, but they can still vote in person. The fact that they don't have to show an ID at the polls. I mean, this is crazy stuff. If you don't think that there are opportunities for fraud and abuse of the system with what is happening and how it's set up in California, and this a Los Angeles election in particular, since that's what we're talking about here, you've either been listening to the mainstream news, which I've got information on that as well, a story on that. You've either been getting your information from mainstream media sources, leftist organizations, or you're deliberately and willfully just not going to take in the information. Now, I know that doesn't apply to you. You're not that way. I'm talking about those that we encounter. There's no way that a normal person using the thinking part of their brain can come to the conclusion that what is happening in Los Angeles is acceptable. So Karen Bass, let me take one more step back. The way that it works in Los Angeles, again, the craziness continues. It's supposedly a nonpartisan election, right? You don't run as a Democrat, Republican for mayor of Los Angeles. It was nonpartisan, so it's a primary, but it's not a primary. So normally in a primary, the Democrats vote to say, hey, this is who we want on the ballot in the general election. Republicans vote and say this is who we want on the ballot in the general election. And then the two candidates or whoever else is in that particular race from other parties, independents and so forth, they have a general election and the winner is who is the elected official. But in this particular case, that's not how it works in Los Angeles. What they do is they say everybody here is nonpartisan. We don't have Democrats and Republicans, I guess, suddenly leading the city of Los Angeles. And so what they do is they say, here is we have an election day in the primary. You come and you vote. And if nobody gets to 50%, then we'll take the top two candidates and then we'll run them, have a runoff in November. And so Karen Bass did not hit 50%. So there's going to be a runoff. And so people thought on election night that Spencer Pratt had a big enough lead to actually be in a one-on-one race with Karen Bass in November. But, of course, votes were trickling in, things that were happening behind closed doors that we were told was totally legit and totally normal. We shouldn't have any problems with this. If you do, you are against our election system and you are trying to destroy this country. You are trying to undermine its quote-unquote democracy, as people would say. That's not what we have, but nonetheless, that's how this is framed and argued. But in reality, when you look at all of the problems, and I haven't even touched on a third of the problems here, but all the problems with the way elections are run in California, it's shocking, really. It's shocking to people who use the thinking part of their brain, as I said. So these votes were being tabulated, and what was interesting is in the mail-in ballot totals that were counted before Election Day, the breakdown of what was received after Election Day totally flipped. Totally flipped. There's reports, even one report, where there were 24 ballots counted, and Spencer Pratt literally got 0 of the votes in that batch of 24,000. I can't confirm some of these things, but people have looked into this, and they've gone through the data, and this is a claim. These are the sorts of things that happen. By the way, This is all self-inflicted. This is all self-inflicted because they don't have to do it this way. If you can't vote, if you can't find the time over the course of several weeks to vote, either to get your mail-in ballot into turned in on time or find a polling place, then you're not serious about voting. And that leads to where we're going here in this story. So there's a lot of problems here, and people who want actual fairness have problems with this. But this is where this is headed. And I'm telling you, if they find out that this is what happened, that these homeless people were bribed to send in mail-in ballots or to vote, I think that these were largely mail-in ballots, but if they are allowed, if it's found out that this is what happened, then every single person who has defended our election integrity in this country needs to apologize to you and to me and to the American people. Because we are being told that these things can't happen. We're the ones who are wrong for asking the questions. But I'm just going to read from this article. Here we go. The FBI is now investigating voter fraud in Los Angeles. Federal agents descended on the streets of Skid Row in downtown Los Angeles Thursday following allegations, here's the important part, that the homeless had been paid to vote in the June 2nd primary. About 20 agents swooped in on the notoriously blighted area after homeless people staying there claimed they'd been bribed with cash to sign multiple registration forms, forge signatures. We're told this stuff doesn't happen. Now, the investigation, listen, this investigation needs to play out here. But this is what the homeless population is saying. And to fill out voter information for the mayoral and gubernatorial primaries. The California Post looked on as plainclothes agents questioned Skid Row residents, asking them if they were paid to vote or were aware of others who were approached with the offer. The Department of Justice would only confirm that the federal agents were investigating, quote, a criminal matter as officers conducted up to 50 interviews. It marked a major escalation in the Fed's probe of voting in Los Angeles, with FBI Director Kash Patel applauding the action. He said this on X: securing our elections is of the utmost priority for this FBI. If you mess with our elections, we will find you. That's what Kash Patel wrote on X. The action came a day after the LA City Council voted to move forward with a controversial proposal introduced by socialist council members. I mean, I feel like I'm reading this. None of this makes sense. I've got homeless people being bribed, allegedly, to fill out voter registrations to vote in these elections. Now I've got a socialist council member who introduced a proposal to allow immigrant non-citizens to vote in city and school board elections. You realize how confusing all of this is? It is wild. But if you read down in here, it says in one of the clips, a man on Skid Row claimed he received $4 to vote for Bass. By the way, if this is true, this is what this is what the radical left, right? The people who tell us that we don't have big enough hearts and love for our fellow man. This is how much they value. This is how much they value their fellow man. $4 to a homeless person to vote for to Karen Bass. That's one of them. When asked whether he also would have been paid to vote for Rahman, he answered yes and said Pratt was not among the candidates he was encouraged to support. So they were being paid, allegedly, to vote for Bass or for Rahman. This is a disaster. What a mess, my friends. Quick time out here on my end. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Last segment of the week. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate having you. Love doing this. Absolutely love doing this. Friends, you know, one of the biggest challenges that we as conservatives have is finding ways to ensure our values align with the things that we do, the way that we live our lives. That includes how we invest our money. You know, I just got a note yesterday from someone who had reached out to 48 Financial, who I'm going to tell you about here, because I love what they are doing at 48 Financial. They specialize in biblically responsible investing. That means they screen out companies that do not align with your faith and your values so that you're not funding things that go completely against what you believe in. They do all the heavy lifting. All you have to do, right? They'll help align your investments with your values, your purpose, your goals. And all you have to do is complete a quick and easy assessment. You can do that at 48financial.com/Todd. That's 48financial.com/Todd. 48Financial, because your money should work for your values. I'm going to look a little bit more into this, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the last thing I wanted to get to. But I've got to finish this. So we've got the homeless on Skid Row in Los Angeles claiming that they were bribed to vote for Karen Bass for ramen in this election. You could vote. You had the choice of voting for either. There's allegations that they had been filling out voter registration forms, all sorts of stuff. Signing multiple registration forms, forging signatures, filling out voter information for the mayoral and gubernatorial primaries. That's what is alleged to have been going on here. Now, this is an investigation. These are just the charges. These are just the allegations. But this is damning. And it also shows you, I've been told, you've been told, we've been scolded by people on the left saying, you're undermining confidence in our... No, I'm not. I'm not undermining confidence in anything, because this is what your system has opened a door to produce. This is, whether this happened or not, this is exactly the sort of thing your system that you designed to be the most secure elections in the history of the world, which is absolutely laughable to me. This is not serious. You're being gaslit if you believe that we have these secure elections, at least places like Los Angeles and the People's Republic of California. There are simple, by the way, the solutions to these things are in the SAVE Act, which Republicans in the Senate won't even push forward for a vote. It's passed the House of Representatives, so we got a bunch of wimps in the Senate. Congratulations, by the way, to Mike Lee for pushing this. But anyway, that's how you solve this. But people in Congress don't want to solve this. They don't care. I understand that they may not be able to overcome the filibuster. I understand. But what I don't agree with is to sit back and to do nothing. Push this before the American people. Tell the American people what is in this. The average person would say there is nothing wrong with the SAVE Act. It would actually prevent some of these shenanigans from what's happening here. So, another person named Kevin Shepard said they gave you an optional choice. He alleged to have that he was offered $2, but he negotiated a higher payment for these. Again, remember, these are the left. This is the left. These are the people who supposedly care about the homeless. Here they are abusing the homeless and paying them reportedly $2 to $4. That's what the numbers I see here are. That's how much they value these folks. He further claimed that he completed a mail-in ballot for Bass and deposited it in a ballot box. So that's what's going on here. Again, this is developing, but that's something that I wanted to make sure I hit on, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, in the days to come. Last thing I want to get to, and I wish I had more time, and I did this to myself. I got to do this quickly. You've heard us talk briefly about the problems that the San Francisco Giants had on their Pride Night, where players were writing Bible verses on their hats in protest to being forced to wear rainbows on their uniforms. These Christians, and by the way, I commend these folks. We need more of this. I hope that this is the beginning of a movement of people who say enough. I'm not participating in this any longer. Here's another example. This is headline here. Minor league team cancels game after players refuse to wear Pride-themed jerseys. This is at WSFA.com. Looks like TV 12. York, Pennsylvania. A minor league baseball team in Pennsylvania forfeited its Pride Night game on Thursday after several players refused to wear jerseys that featured a rainbow design. By the way, a rainbow design means the sleeves of the jerseys were as bright rainbows as you could imagine. So your sleeves, rainbows. We clearly know why. In a statement, the York Revolution, that's the team, said it was with great disappointment that the team did not play the game and chose to forfeit. Well, who made you forfeit, by the way? The team's Pride Night event featured other activities outside the game, including fan batting practice, park tours, and music. those activities were still held free to the public. Well, thankfully, we had that to go to. The decision was not reached lightly. Unfortunately, several of our players refused to wear the scheduled Pride Night jersey, and the club decided that hosting the event is more important than forcing players to wear jerseys they are not comfortable with and playing the game, the team wrote in a statement. Why are you trying to force players to do anything like this? By the way, we do have something called the freedom of religion, and it is absolutely unequivocally a biblical truth that God created marriage, that God created sex, dare I say, to exist between man and woman. That was God's design between husband and wife. This is the opposite of that. Kudos to these players. What a stupid decision by this baseball team to cancel, forfeit. Got to go, STG.